Hi guys, Miss Davis here, ready for day 6 of the Anne Frank series. And I'm going to skip a couple journal entries today to a farther spot into October, all the way through September and into October today. Today a little bit more somber, today a little bit more reflective, at least for me and my world and the things I'm thinking about today as I revisit the Diary of Anne Frank. Um, well, we can talk about that in a little bit. So for today, Friday, October 9th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I've got only dismal and depressing news for you today. Our many Jewish friends are being taken away by the dozen. These people are treated by the Gestapo without a shred of decency, being loaded into cattle trucks and sent to Westerbork, the big Jewish camp in Drenthe. Westerbork sounds terrible. Only one washing cubicle for 100 people and not nearly enough lavatories. There's no separate accommodation. Men, women, and children all sleep together. One hears of frightful immorality because of this, and a lot of the women and even girls who stay there any length of time are expecting babies. It's impossible to escape. Most of the people in the camp are branded as inmates by their shaven heads and many also by their Jewish appearance. It is If it is as bad as this in Holland, whatever will it be like in the distant and barbarous regions they are sent to? We assume that most of them are murdered. The English radio speaks of their being gassed. Perhaps that's the quickest way to die. I feel terribly upset. I couldn't tear myself away while Miep told these dreadful stories, and she herself was equally wound up for that matter. Just recently, for instance, a poor old crippled Jewess was sitting on her doorstep. She'd been told to wait there by the Gestapo, who had gone to fetch a car to take her away. The poor old thing was terrified by the guns that they were shooting at English planes overhead and by the glaring beams of the searchlights, but Miep did not dare to take her in. No one would undergo such a risk. The Germans strike without the slightest mercy. Ellie, too, is very quiet. Her boyfriend has got to go to Germany. She's afraid that the airmen who fly over our homes will drop their bombs, often weighing 1,000,000 kilos on Dirk's head. Jokes such as, "He's not likely to get 1,000,000, and it only takes one bomb," are in rather bad taste. Dirk is certainly not the only one who has to go. Trainloads of boys leave daily. If they stop at a small station en route sometimes, some of them manage to get out unnoticed and escape. Perhaps a few manage it. This, however, is not the end of my bad news. Have you ever heard of hostages? That's the latest thing in penalties for sabotage. Can you imagine anything so dreadful? Prominent citizens, innocent people, are thrown into prison to await their fate. If the saboteur can't be traced, the Gestapo simply put about 5 hostages against the wall. Announcements of their deaths appear in the papers frequently. These outrages are described as fatal accidents. Nice people, the Germans, to think I was once one of them too. No, Hitler took away our nationality long ago. In fact, Germans and Jews are the greatest enemies in the world. Yours, Anne. So, for me, this is one of the darkest journal entries to date. Anne is very acutely aware of what is going on in her world and the tragedies that are befalling other people. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to know that there is horror and tragedy and death outside your window and not really be able to do much of anything about it except feel sad and depressed about it. And so, even though I know that social distancing and coronavirus is like nowhere near the capacity of what Anne is dealing with right now, and that kind of depravity and evil. However, the stories of people are starting to hit home today. I've read a couple of stories about people. I got some news that some people who are working in schools in New York City, young, vibrant, healthy people are passing away due to coronavirus, and it's starting to get a little bit more real. And I feel that same sort of like helplessness and maybe just kind of like impotent sadness because I would do anything to help people, but what can I do? And I'm stuck in here, and I can't I can't leave. I can't go anywhere, and So I don't understand exactly what Anne's going through. I don't think any of us could. But there's some part of me that starts to empathize with Anne and her situation. And I think probably take what I'm feeling and multiply it by 10 or 20, and then I'd have some sort of idea of what she was feeling. But that entry really got me thinking today. So we'll move on to the next journal entry, Friday, October 16th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I'm terribly busy. I've just translated a chapter out of La Belle Nivernais and made notes of new words. Then a perfectly foul math problem and 3 pages of French grammar. I flatly refuse to do these math problems every day. Daddy agrees that they're vile. I'm almost better at them than he is, though neither of us are much good, and we often have to fetch Margot. I'm the furthest on of the 3 of us in shorthand. Yesterday I finished The Assault. It's quite amusing, but doesn't touch Hoop der Hoel. As a matter of fact, I think Sissy van Marksveld is the first-rate writer. I shall definitely let my children read her books. Mummy, Margot, and I are as thick as thieves again. It really is much better. Margot and I got in the same bed together last evening. It was a frightful squash, but that was just the fun of it. She asked if she could read my diary. I said, yeah, at least bits of it, and then I asked if I could read hers, and she said yes. Then we got onto the subject of the future. I asked her what she wanted to be, but she wouldn't say, and made a great secret of it. I gathered something about teaching, but I'm not sure if I'm right, but I do think so. Really, I shouldn't be so curious. This morning I was lying on Peter's bed, having chased him off at first. He was furious with me. Not that I cared very much. He might be a bit more friendly with me for once. After all, I did give him an apple yesterday. I asked Margot if she thought I was very ugly. She said that I was quite attractive and that I had nice eyes. Rather vague, don't you think? Till next time, yours, Anne. And so, just like that, I mean, she goes from being like terribly woebegone about this horrible situation with the Nazis and the Gestapo and people disappearing and stories of what's happening to them, and then swings back into, studies and schools and, being a kid and playing around with your sister. And I can't imagine like the question of, what do you want to do when you grow up, or what do you see in your future? I mean, I think there's probably a reason that Margot didn't answer that question. I mean, maybe she's thinking that she doesn't know if there's going to be a future, and doesn't know what that future is going to look like. And maybe it was not so much that she didn't know, but that what she wanted to be, but she didn't know what the world was going to be. And oh my goodness, can't I identify with that today? Like that one's getting me right in the feels. Oh my. And then just normal things of um, wondering, am I pretty? Am I smart? Am I good enough? I mean, we all have those little like moments of doubt, self-reflection. Next entry, Tuesday, the 20th of October, 1942. Dear Kitty, my hand still shakes, although it's 2 hours since we had the shock. I should explain that there are 5 fire extinguishers in the house. We knew that someone was coming to fill them, but no one had warned us when the carpenter, or whatever you call him, was coming. The result was that we weren't making any attempt to keep quiet, until I heard hammering outside the landing opposite our cupboard door. I thought of the carpenter at once and warned Eli, who was having a meal with us, that she shouldn't go downstairs. Daddy and I posted ourselves at the door so as to hear when the man left. After he'd been working for a quarter of an hour, he laid his hammer and tools down on top of our cupboard, as we thought, and knocked at our door. We turned absolutely white. Perhaps he had heard something after all and wanted to investigate our secret den. It seemed like it. The knocking, pulling, pushing, the wrenching went on. I nearly fainted at the thought that this utter stranger might discover our beautiful secret hiding place. And just as I thought my last hour was at hand, I heard Mr. Kufius say, "Open the door, it's only me." We opened it immediately. The hook that holds the cupboard, which can be undone by people who know the secret, had got jammed. That's why no one had been able to warn us about the carpenter. The man had now gone downstairs, and Kufius wanted to fetch Eli, but he couldn't open the cupboard again. It was a great relief to me, I can tell you. In my imagination, the man who I thought was trying to get in had been growing and growing in size until in the end he appeared to be a giant and the greatest fascist that ever walked the earth. Well, luckily everything was okay this time. Meanwhile, we had great fun on Monday. Meep and Hank spent the night here. Margot and I went in Mummy and Daddy's room for one night, so the Van Santons could have our room. The meal tasted divine. There was one small interruption. Daddy's lamp blew a fuse, and all of a sudden we were sitting in darkness. What was to be done? There was some fuse wire in the house, but the fuse box is right at the very back of the dark storeroom. Not such a nice job after dark. Still, the men ventured forth, and after 10 minutes we were able to put the candles away again. I got up very early this morning. Hank had to leave at 8:30. After a cozy breakfast, Meep went downstairs. It was pouring, and she was glad not to have to cycle to the office. Next week, Eli is coming to stay for a night. Yours, Anne. So, again, another, interruption. Have you ever been really scared, and kind of, your stomach drops, and you get really hot, and there's, a big flush, and you can't even think and act, and, you're just terrified. And so I am thinking that must be sort of what Anna's feeling right there. She knows the Nazis are out there. She knows they're outside. She knows what will happen to them if they get caught. And this idea that someone could just, find them is just, it's terrifying. And this idea, this line here, she says, in my imagination, the man who I thought was trying to get in had been growing and growing in size until in the end he appeared to be a giant and the greatest fascist that ever walked the earth. That line really sticks out to me, and here's why. And here's my identification for today. I'm hearing these stories in my imagination. My mind can be such a terrible trickster sometimes, and I let my thoughts run away from me, and I think, oh, what if this and what if that, and before I know it, it's this big, huge thing, and I've got myself all in the tiz, and so I can identify with Anne's, one, sudden fear, and then two, growing fear of her imagination, which can be really hard sometimes. And last journal entry I'm going to read today is dated Thursday, October 29th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I'm awfully worried. Daddy is ill. He has a high temperature and a red rash. It looks like measles. Think of it, we can't even call a doctor. Mummy is letting him have a good sweat. Perhaps that will send his temperature down. This morning, Meep told us that all the furniture has been removed from the Van Dan's home. We haven't told Mrs. Van Dan yet. She's such a bundle of nerves already, and we don't feel like listening to another moan over all the lovely china and the beautiful chairs that she left at home. We had to leave almost all our nice things behind, so what's the good of grumbling about it now? I'm allowed to read more grown-up books lately. I'm now reading Ava's Youth by Nico van Suchlen. I can't see much difference between this and the schoolgirl love stories. It is true there are bits about women selling themselves to unknown men in back streets. They ask a packet of money for it. Oh, I'd die of shame if anything like that happened to me. Also, it says that Ava has a monthly period. Oh, I'm so longing to have it too. It seems so important. Daddy has brought the plays of Goethe and Schiller from the big cupboard. He's going to read to me every evening. We've started with Don Carlos. Following Daddy's good example, Mummy has pressed her prayer book into my hand. For decency's sake, I read some of the prayers in German. They are certainly beautiful, but they don't convey much to me. Why does she force me to be pious, just to oblige her? Tomorrow we're going to light the fire for the first time. I expect we shall be suffocated with smoke. The chimney hasn't been swept for ages. Let's hope the thing draws. Yours, Anne. So a couple of things strike me at the end of this journal entry. One, Daddy is sick. And that thought, at least right now, terrifying. I don't know what would happen, what I would do if someone in my house were to fall ill right now. I think it would be crazy with worry. I also don't know, would we be able to get help if someone got sick? So that helplessness and someone being ill in the house, that's really got me today. And then also the idea that everything behind them is being picked up. Their whole life that was outside there is gone, and they know it, which is crazy. Like, the world is never going to be the same for them. They can't go home. There's no home again. Oh my gosh. And then lastly, it's turning winter. They're going to light the fire for the first time. It means that it's the end of October. It's turning cold, and winter is going to be a whole nother bag. So while we are waiting for spring and hoping the days get warmer, the opposite is happening. The days are going to get colder and shorter and harsher, and I'm worried for Anne at this point. So it was good talking to you today. We'll read again more tomorrow. Bye-bye.